The Second Amendment Foundation and the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms hosted the 30th Annual Gun Rights Policy Conference in Phoenix in September. Speakers include authors, bloggers, radio hosts, knife rights officials, and the owner of the Well-Armed Woman Training Company. This portion is about 2.5 hours.
We'll bring up our first panel, which is called Second Amendment Outliers, Blade Suppressors, and Hunting. Our three panelists are Carrie Lightfoot, owner of the Well-Armed Woman Training Company. She is new to GRPC, so give her a warm welcome. But also, new to us and deserving, not new to us and deserving of warm welcomes nonetheless, are Todd Ratner, chairman of NFA Freedom Alliance, and Doug Ritter, founder and chairman of Knife Rights Org. They will each have 9 minutes, at which time my phone will bong at them, and then I will get up and poke them with the other knitting needle, because I gave one to Julie, but I kept one for myself. I would like to remind our panelists to please give their name again when they right at the beginning of their talk, so that people that are recording and podcasting and C-spanning and God knows what else can capture who's who. Okay, without further ado, we'll start with Carrie.
One further ado, please everybody take out your cell phones and turn off the ringer.
All right, ready? Talk fast. Good morning, everybody. My name is Carrie Lightfoot. We have some women in the house. We have a few? Yes? What I'm going to talk about very quickly is how we can double that next year and how we can get millions of women to the polls and activated politically. We all know that women are coming to gun ownership in droves. We all hear it, right? Everyone's talking about it. We're talking about women coming to the range and coming into responsible gun ownership. This is huge, and this is significant, and significant for what we're here to talk about today. We see them at the ranges. We see them in the gun stores. Where we need to see them is here. Where we need to see them is with you all in your communities, passionately driving for change and to protect our Second Amendment rights. Everyone is talking about it. But what we need to do is start talking to women. So let's stop talking about women and let's start talking with them. That's our task, mine and yours, is to engage women in the Second Amendment conversation, which historically has been a men's conversation. Agreed? So we need to bring them in and draw them in and create the pathway for them. So that's our mission. And why is this important? Because women, guys, can save and protect our rights. Women are drivers. If you want something done, you get a woman to do it, right? Right? When women are enthusiastic and passionate about something, things happen. Take a look at education. Who drives educational change? Women. Health, nutrition. Well, women are just as passionate about their gun rights as they are about these other important things to them and their families. When mom is shooting, who's shooting? The whole family. And there's probably a few guys here, a few families where the women kind of drive the pocketbook, maybe, just a few. So when mom's shooting and the whole family is shooting, that is really good for the industry. What we need to do is bring them into the political debate and political conversation. Women are raising the next generation of Second Amendment supporters, lovers. It's a very important task, and that's what women do. And I believe strongly women will influence legislation. Let's talk about the B word, Bloomberg. No profanity, okay, I'll watch my mouth. You know, it's more than just one person. It's his influence on others that we are combating, and they are going after women. They're going after mothers, they're going after women. What's wrong with that message? The message is that we're not capable of taking care of ourselves. Excuse me, that's false. Women are equipped, we're strong, and we can be trained to effectively protect ourselves with a firearm. So I totally rebuke that message, and I do that on behalf of all women. We rebuke it. It's perpetuating victimhood for women. We're tired of it. The target on our backs is big enough. We're here to shrink it, and protecting our rights helps to shrink that target even more. So, enough of that. Do you believe that they're ignorant? Are the efforts ignorant? They are ignorant, but they're not stupid. We can't confuse the two. Their ignorance is they don't get it. But they're not stupid. The efforts to take away our rights and oppose our rights are meticulously effective. It's strategic. They know what they're doing. And the effort to try and minimize the voice of women will not work. But we have to help amplify the voice of women. Because what's the tactic? The tactic is emotion, stories. Guess who has lots of stories, guys, that this world is not hearing? Women. Stories of strength, courage, fierce protection of their families. There are some incredible stories that we need to be sharing, and we need to have the communities hear these stories. Our response typically is statistics, numbers. From my cold, dead hands, that's what we hear. Is that accurate? Yes. Is it effective? We need stories. We need to tap into the emotion of this topic. We need to be focusing on the stories of survival. Who's better equipped to emotionalize? Who's better equipped to share emotional stories and messages? Women. We're good at it. We're naturally very emotional beings. Not that you guys aren't, but we're pretty good at it. I believe there's three audiences that we're talking to. The anti-gunners, we talk to them, you're talking to a brick wall. Cement is set, they're not hearing anything. On the other side is us, Second Amendment lovers. You're preaching to the choir. We're all in. It's those folks in the middle that understand that support the Second Amendment, but they're not fully educated about what it really, really means. That's who we have to reach, because with each tragedy, and yes, they're all tragedies, with each one of those, that cushion of their support gets smaller and smaller. And one day, one terrible tragedy pushes those people. You know, background checks make sense. And they start to shift. That's who we have to talk to. And I believe that women will be the ones that can effectively speak to them. They have mothers, they have wives, and they have sisters. You put anyone in the position, what would you do if that were you? It's whatever it takes. And the firearm is the best tool in a whatever it takes situation, isn't it? So, we have a chapter program. The Wellerman Women Chapter Program is now in 50 states, 235 chapters. That's not about me or the Wellerman Woman. What that says is how passionately women are coming to firearm ownership and how seriously they are. Who wants to argue with a woman who wants to protect herself? What media outlet, what politician wants to get in my face and tell me that, and be the bad guy to tell me that I can't have the tools to equip myself? This program has had over 200 news stories, not one of them negative. Not one negative news story. Why is that? Fascination of women and guns. And because it's women arming themselves to protect themselves. So, a lot of power in our stories. You have a huge army before you of women that will get things done, will do it passionately, will network and change legislation. I call on all of you to reach out and talk to women. We're different. We don't talk like you guys do. We don't hear things like you guys do. You need to understand those differences, reach out. Because together, all of us, men, women, children, can and will preserve our Second Amendment rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Perfect. You had 35 seconds left, and thank you. Next, we're going to call up Todd Ratner.
Good morning. My name's Todd Ratner. I represent the NFA Freedom Alliance. And I wanted to welcome you all to Arizona. This is my adopted home state. I live in Tucson. And normally when I talk to crowds, I try to tell them how horrible Arizona is and how hot it is and how many scorpions we have and how many rattlesnakes we have, because I don't want anybody from another state moving out here. But quite frankly, with this crowd, you guys are all welcome to come back and stay as long as you like. Many of you know me as Knife Rights Director of Legislative Affairs. I work very closely with Doug Ritter here and Sue Ritter, who is over there somewhere if my eyes work well. There she is, if my eyes work well. We work as a team to try to turn back bad knife laws. But I'm also an NRA director, as many of you know, and as if I weren't busy enough, last year I started the NFA Freedom Alliance, which is an organization dedicated to easing restrictions on NFA gun owners. And the reason that I started the NFA Freedom Alliance is because I believe the folks that own NFA items are the single most neglected group of gun owners in the country. We're sort of the red-headed stepchild in the basement, and that needs to change. NFA gun owners have never had a full-time lobbying organization speaking for them. The NFA Freedom Alliance is that organization. The need for the NFA Freedom Alliance has become increasingly more important with the explosion of the sale of suppressors. That's the one category of firearms, so to speak, even though none of us would really consider them firearms. The ATF categorizes them as firearms. That's been the one area of the firearms industry that's absolutely exploded, and that's part of why I believe that the NFA Freedom Alliance is so necessary. It's probably the biggest growing and fastest growing segment of the firearms sales market currently. Since starting the organization last October, we've had quite a record of success. We've passed 4 pro-NFA bills in 4 separate states, and you think, well, what does the NFA have to do with state law? Well, a lot of states have duplicative law of the NFA. There are additional regulations. I mean, for instance, one of the most amazing things was when I was doing research prior to forming the NFA Freedom Alliance, I found out that in the state of Texas, it was past tense, was technically illegal to possess any NFA weapon. However, it was a defense to prosecution if you were arrested for possessing it. Now, that may be comforting to some, and it has been comforting to some, obviously, because Texas has more registered NFA items than probably any state in the union. So it's obviously comforting to some people that, well, okay, I've got a defense to prosecution, but what does defense to prosecution mean? It means you may beat the rap, but you're going to take the ride. You're going to be sitting in the back of that police car. You're going to possibly have to go before a judge. You're certainly going to have to deal with a prosecutor. If you've got a brain, you're going to have to get an attorney, pay that attorney, and figure out how to get your stuff back, and then hope that the judge agrees with you. And this is real. This actually happened. I mean, I've got a gun dealer who I worked closely with this last legislative session, who had his gun and his SBR and his suppressor confiscated from him. He was arrested. He spent the night in jail. Cost him, after over 11 months and $14,000, he finally got his stuff back. And that's in the free state of Texas. And so when I found out about that, that was one of my primary missions, was to overturn that law. And anybody that knows anything about the Texas legislature, it's not easy to pass anything, contrary to popular belief. It's very difficult. And in one session, we were able to overturn that law, rip it out of the books, repeal it, and replace it with the affirmative ability to own NFA items as long as they're registered pursuant to the NFA. Thank you. In Tennessee, we did the exact same thing. Tennessee had the same law. In Arkansas, we passed a CLEO, what I call a CLEO shall certify bill, which forces a chief law enforcement officer to certify your NFA forms if you're not a prohibited possessor. We also made it legal to hunt with suppressors in Montana. And those are all things that I was able to accomplish with the help of our friends and donors and folks like that who helped us get it done, and we did all of that since just last October. I know that the major question on everybody's mind, especially in this room, is what about repealing the NFA altogether? I mean, why do we need it? It is one of the most poorly crafted statutes on the books, whether federal or state. It is so confusing. I sat with Jeff from a different NFA organization who knows more about this stuff than almost anybody. We sat in the lobby for the past 2 days, and neither one of us can explain a lot of this stuff. What we can explain is how the ATF interprets all of it, and it's a big mess. So we do have a strategy for eventually repealing the NFA altogether, which is what our primary goal is. That is our primary goal. And quite frankly, we're one of the only organizations that I'm aware of, at least, that actually has that as a stated goal. We're not afraid to say it. The NFA should be ripped out, root and branch, and thrown in the trash. Part of our strategy, you folks will understand. 20 years ago, when you looked around this country, or maybe it's 25 now, CCW permits, shall issue CCW permits were not popular. We didn't see them in states all over the place. Florida was probably the first. And politicians all believed the lies about, all of the lies. Blood was going to run in the streets. We were all going to shoot each other over parking spots, and none of that has materialized. And today, you have Democrats and Republicans holding up their CCW permit as a talisman to the gun rights movement to say, look how pro-gun I am, I've got a CCW permit. Well, why is that? Because many of these folks, the reason it is because many of these folks started out in state legislatures as a state senator or a state rep, and they were part of either the original passage of CCW, shall issue CCW permit laws, or they've been part of the process to fix them and improve them over the years. We need to do the same thing at the state level, state by state, with legislators to educate them about the NFA and the effects of the NFA on the average gun owner. I've talked to, when I start bringing up these issues with state legislators and I talk to them about it, and I go through the process with them and I explain it all to them, the reaction is, are you kidding me? I mean, for a rifle that's 2 inches shorter than a rifle I've got in my safe, I've got to go get fingerprints and photographed and pay $200, and it's insane. But you can also own a pistol that is in the same exact configuration that's 7 inches shorter than the average rifle, but you don't have to, and it's the exact same configuration, and you don't have to get the stamp, you don't have to go, and they're like, this is ridiculous. That's the reaction we want. That's what we want. We want them to say this thing's ridiculous, so that when they get off the farm team and they end up going to Congress, we have a sympathetic ear and they have some understanding of what the law is. I think I'm getting beeped on, aren't I? Okay. All right, I'm just gonna quickly tell you what we're working on right now. Currently, we're working on repealing the ban on hunting with suppressors in as many states as possible. It's ridiculous. In Europe, it's a requirement to hunt with a suppressor. We need to do that in as many states as possible. There's still a few states, including Oklahoma and a couple others. Alaska, believe it or not, has a defense to prosecution law on the books. We got to get rid of that. We're also working on this. It's an important effort, the Shall Certify, to make sure that the CLEOs certify those Form 4s and Form 1s, and that you don't have to leave your Second Amendment rights up to the discretion of some local law enforcement officer. And whether or not the 41P rule that Mark Barnes talked about yesterday is promulgated or not, it doesn't matter. It's still a good thing to have until we can take some of these items out of the NFA altogether or repeal it altogether. And in conclusion, I'm going to wrap it up. In conclusion, I want to ask you guys to support me. I'm running this whole thing by myself. I'm the lobbyist, and I'm running the whole show. I need your help. If you can help, or if you know somebody that's interested in this issue that can help, the website is www.nfafa.org. And then we also have a Facebook page. If you look up NFA Freedom Alliance on Facebook, you'll see we're running fundraisers and raffles all the time. Right now you can win an SBR and a suppressor combo. And with that, I'll say thank you, and I really appreciate you. And feel free to move to Arizona. Thank you.
Hang on a second, if you don't mind.
Okay.
I'm going to exercise my right as the moderator, and in the interest of our friends at C-SPAN, I'm going to ask Todd, put him on the spot and ask him if he could do maybe 2 minutes on the history of NFA. So when we get on C-SPAN, this will all go out.
Yes, and what I may have to do is I can give a quick history. I may have to look at my buddy Jeff over there, who's the true historian on the NFA. But in 1934, for some reason, the Congress, in their great wisdom, thought that it would be a good idea to add a tax to owning certain items. Back then, I believe it was only machine guns in 1934 and silencers, machine guns and silencers in 1934. I'm looking at Jeff and he's nodding. But it was in a response to, I believe it had to do with the Prohibition era, supposed gunfights that were happening, and they felt that if they put this onerous $200 tax on these items, that less people would own them, and somehow they were going to save the world, and people would stop shooting each other with these guns. And we know to this day that none of that works. Prohibition in all of its forms, have never worked. And so that was the genesis of it in 1934. It was expanded in 1968 through the Gun Control Act, when they added things to the NFA, and one of the things that they added, which is the dreaded Hughes Amendment, which most people in this room know what the Hughes Amendment was. What the Hughes Amendment said was that was in 1986, actually. That was in 1986, I'm sorry. So in 1986, they added the Hughes Amendment, and that's the one that really sticks in everybody's craw, that essentially said that any machine gun manufactured after a particular date in 1986 could no longer be transferred between citizens, even though you were submitting fingerprints, even though you were subjected to a background check, even though the local sheriff had to sign off on your transfer. They said that you couldn't manufacture a new machine gun for the purpose of transfer from private citizen to private citizen, thereby limiting the pool of machine guns that are available, and as we all know, driving the price of a machine gun through the roof. And that's where we stand today, with all of these laws in place that regulate some of these guns. But the most ridiculous part about all of it is that there's almost no reason for any of it. It's very arbitrary. It makes absolutely no sense. Like I said, you can have an AR-15 style pistol that's 7 inches long, that has a 7-inch barrel, but you can't have a rifle with less than a 16-inch barrel. And For some reason, shotguns have to have a minimum of an 18-inch barrel, and there's no rhyme or reason to it, there's no logic to it, because if you can have a 16-inch rifle, why can't you have a 16-inch shotgun? And if you happen to have a 16-inch shotgun, you're subject to a federal charge and potentially 10 years in jail and thousands of dollars in fines. So it's absolutely ridiculous. It's one of the stupidest federal laws on the books. And like I said earlier, it's time to rip it out, root and branch, and throw it in the trash.
Thanks, Todd. And now, to clean things up, we'll bring up Doug Ritter, our friend from Knife Rights Org.
Good morning, gun lobby. Knife Rights is the knife lobby. You are the knife lobby. We are the knife lobby. And this year, I bring you a very important message. All knives matter. Repeat after me. All knives matter. I can't hear you. All knives matter. Thank you. We're working on that. These essential tools, knives that millions of Americans use every day at home, at work, at play, are also arms protected by the Second Amendment. It is an essential right. For 6 years now, I have been coming to GRPC to share this message, that the Second Amendment doesn't say firearms, it says arms. And such, Knife Rights is the second front in the defense of our Second Amendment. The good news... The good news is that people all over America are getting the message. Our success is translating into both respect and new opportunities. We are being covered by major media, including, in many instances, left-wing media such as New York's The Village Voice and Mother Jones. And it's all positive. Knife Rights' success in our efforts to roll back the absurd anti-knife laws and to pass preemption is also introducing the Second Amendment to an entire group of folks who have never considered the Second Amendment their own, and in many cases have been anti-Second Amendment. As a result of the tragic incident with Freddie Gray's knife arrest in Baltimore and his subsequent death, and similar incidents in a number of urban centers, we are gaining even more bipartisan support. Remarkably, this past year, the primary sponsors of 2 of our pro-knife bills were liberal Dems because they are beginning to understand that their constituents are also being jailed over stupid, irrational, and antiquated knife laws, just like all of us sitting here. This year, Knife Rights continues to rewrite knife law in America, passing 5 pro-knife bills in 4 states so far: Maine, Nevada, Oklahoma, and Texas, with 3 bills remaining in Illinois, Michigan, and including a Wisconsin bill that would repeal Wisconsin knife bans and which also includes knife law preemption so that there will no longer be any illegal knives in Wisconsin. And worth noting, a tip of the hat to my lobbyist, Todd, that bill started out as a switchblades with CCW bill and has now morphed with his work on the ground in Madison into a full-blown knife reform bill. In total, we have passed 19 pro-knife bills in 14 states in 6 years and defeated 5 anti-knife bills, including a machete ban in New York this year. Every one of those victories is a win for the Second Amendment. As you heard yesterday from our attorney, Dan Schmutter, this week saw a critical victory in our 4-year-old federal civil rights lawsuit against New York City and DA Cyrus Vance Jr. over their persecution of over 60,000 New Yorkers. The Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit reversed the recently appointed district court judge's ridiculous ruling that nobody in our lawsuit had standing, sending it back to the lower court for disposition on the merits, finally, after 4 years. I was thrilled to hear yesterday that already attorneys in 2 gun rights cases are planning to use this decision in their own Second Amendment lawsuits. This just goes to show that knife rights really is the second front. We are all in this together. As you heard yesterday from Mark Barnes, ivory bands are the new stealth front in our fight for the Second Amendment, both at the federal and state levels. We defeated over a dozen ivory band bills in the states this year with the help of our friends at the NRA and others, only losing in California. And, well, it's California. What more do I have to say? If you had told me 9 years ago when I founded Knife Rights that I would be spending a significant amount of my time fighting ivory bands, I'd have told you were nuts. But we must not walk away from such an important battle that threatens millions of Americans with billions of dollars of takings by the feds. Takings which would just happen to remove hundreds of thousands of knives and guns from circulation, making it illegal to sell or trade or even work on them. Let me be clear. Knife Rights abhors the poaching of all species. The proven solution is to attack poaching at the source, not punish lawful ivory owners in the United States who cannot have any effect on the poaching in Africa and the traffic in illegal ivory to China and Asia. Successful anti-poaching efforts in Africa have demonstrated that aggressive enforcement in the field does save elephants. Stealing the investments of millions of Americans will not save a single elephant in Africa. This is the worst kind of feel-good, do-bad government action. If you have any questions whether these ivory bands are good or bad, all you really need to know is that the concept was developed and promoted by the Clinton Foundation, and that the largest organization promoting it today is the Humane Society of the United States. They are raising millions of dollars. They don't give a damn about the elephants in Africa. Not a penny is going to the elephants in Africa. That money is used to fight gun owners. They are raising millions of dollars because they discovered that an orphan baby elephant calf next to a butchered mother raises a whole lot more money than a cute little panda. Next year, we expect to be battling bans in over 20 states, every one of which threatens gun owners as well as knife owners. Oh, shut up. Tomorrow, Monday, is the deadline to submit comments on the Fed's proposed final ivory ban rule. Please, every one of you, if you have not already done it, go to kniferights.org and follow the links on the homepage to submit a comment tomorrow, by tomorrow at midnight, in opposition to this absurd ban that will not save a single elephant in Africa, but will cost Americans billions and potentially remove hundreds of thousands of guns and knives from the market. Also this year, the Knife Owners Protection Act, authored by Knife Rights, was refiled in both houses of Congress. The House COPA bill, sponsored by Arizona Congressman Matt Salmon, is still in committee. However, recently, the COPA bill in the Senate was passed out of committee. It awaits an appropriate bill to be tacked onto, but given how little Congress has done these days, I'm not holding my breath. By the same token, 6 years ago, they told us that our fifth exemption to the Federal Switchblade Act would never pass, and we got that done. Please help by encouraging your senators and congressmen to co-sponsor this bill. The results speak for themselves. Knife Rights is the second front in the defense of the Second Amendment. We are rewriting knife law in America. Join us, become a member, make a donation, help us continue this extraordinary record of success, and remember, all knives matter.
Thanks, Doug. And thank you, panelists, for a good kickoff of Sunday morning. Great panels, good content. Appreciate it very much. You can exit stage left, and I'll bring up my next group of speakers. Our next panel is packed with experts. It is titled Using the Media to Advance Gun Rights. We will go in the order they are listed on the agenda, except that we are going to let our good friend Don Irvine from Accuracy in Media go first, so that Charles Heller can adjust his levels and so on, and which, as far as I know, is not a euphemism. And they will each have 5 minutes. So I'm going to bring Don up first.
Far out, man.
Okay, Don, come on up.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I want to thank, I think everybody should really give a round of applause to the Second Amendment Foundation, to Alan, to Julianne, to Peggy, and the staff for a wonderful, wonderful conference. This is not an easy thing to pull off. I've done conferences and I know. So I'm going to try to keep my remarks brief. We're talking about the media. This is something that I do for a living and I've done for a living for a long time. I think we can say fairly easily that most of us in this room don't consider the media our friend when it comes to gun rights. But that doesn't mean they can't become your friends, or at least maybe frenemies along the way. And I think this is where it's incumbent upon us to do things to make this happen. Everybody in the media is busy. These reporters, the system has changed. They're not doing the kind of work that they were 20 years ago. Newspapers aren't what they used to be. Broadcast television has changed. All of these things, cable television. Now we see more of a move to the internet and the way people get their news. Now you can do things with the media, quickly. You can, their information is fairly public. You can find their email addresses usually through the newspaper or the station. You can usually find their Facebook account, their name, or their Twitter handle or something like that. You can build a relationship. You can build some contacts if you use those kinds of things. So that's one thing. When you're talking with the media, when you're talking with anybody really, is that arm yourselves with the facts. Okay, I'm not trying to use, but that is really, really important, because the facts are the facts. The facts actually favor our side. But what happens with the media is that with a lot of these things, it's not that they're necessarily overly liberally biased all the time, but they tend to be very ignorant of the facts when it comes to gun rights. So it's incumbent upon everyone in this room to use, that to study, to bone up on the facts and to have those facts at the ready. You can do that very easily now, thanks to the internet, to be able to do enough research to go through those things. So I think if you do that, I think you're going to be you'll be well armed, as we say. Now, my other thing too, my big passion, with this is using social media. Social media is extremely important in the battle on gun rights. Everybody, or the large percentage of the population now is using Facebook, they're using Twitter. These are ways to do this. If you're really that passionate about gun rights, you own a firearm, you're thing like this, think about social media as another tool in your toolbox, but also as another weapon. Facebook, I want you to be passionate using social media to express your feelings about gun rights. These things, now you might think, oh, well, I only have, 5 friends, or I only have, what I do with Facebook is I put up a lot of cat videos. Well, if you're doing that, you're doing it wrong, okay? I'm sorry. You may love cats, but spending all your time with cat videos is not going to advance the cause of gun rights. But you can do this, because what happens, your number of followers on Twitter, your number of friends on Facebook, everything that you do is potentially shareable, potentially retweetable, so that you amplify your voice by many times. You don't even know sometimes the effect that has, but you can just see that by doing that. Now, what everybody in this room should be doing as well is that you should be using it now. If you haven't been using Facebook, if you've been using Twitter, things like this to do things about this conference at this moment, then you better get on your phones, get on your tablets, get on your computers, and do something now, because that is another way of doing this and expressing that message. Instagram, if you don't really know what to do with how to write a post or to send a tweet, you can pretty much take a picture. How many people take pictures with their cameras, with their phones, all the time? Instagram is a very easy way to do that. And it back feeds the other way. You can link that to Twitter, to your Facebook account. You get all of that all in one setting. It's a wonderful way of pushing that out. We're a very visual society. People look at pictures, people look at graphs, they take that, that's an immediacy, they retweet that, they send that out, they share it. It has just an enormous effect by when you go out there and you just go kind of boom with all of that. One of the things that's effective for the other side, something that we need to do a little bit more of, is emotion, is use emotion. Emotion is, why do we have Ferguson? Why do we have all these problems? Why do I come from Maryland. In my backyard basically was Freddie Gray. What happens here? It's the emotion of these people, of the anti-gun rights people, who are out there and they're expressing themselves, and then they just suck up all the air in the room basically, and they do this. If we had that same passion, that same emotion, there are stories, as Alan Coren, who you'll hear from later, he goes around saying guns save lives. Well, duh, yeah, it does, but let's go and tell that message. Let's go tell the people, let's show the people, and let's go find those people who've had their life saved by that, and let's do it, and let's do it now.
Thank you, Don. You gonna? Great. And next, we're going to hear from our good friend Charles Heller. Charles?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm one of the rare people that'll speak here that can say, Mr. Gottlieb, I paid for this microphone. I want to talk a little bit about harnessing the emotion that Don just talked about. Actually, is a very good lead-in to the point I want to make. And that is, we are all very passionate about our topic. I mean, to us, this is just it is so endemic to our way of life. We don't think about it. To us, a firearm is another Leatherman tool, right? It's just a piece of equipment. And to the anti-freedom people, it's a talisman of evil. And there isn't a great bridge in between them. So while you need to be passionate about it, you need to be careful about the way you express this, especially to people in the media, because your cheeriness, your enthusiasm can be mistaken for an enthusiasm to do harm. So what you have to do is be very excited, like Don said, be passionate, but at the same time be careful in your language. The expression, shooting to slide lock, to us is just, a failure to reload, but to them it means you empty the gun into somebody. So you have to be careful with how you language things. I want to talk a little bit about, for those of you, who of you are involved in here in your state level organizations? Okay? Everybody in Arizona, put your hand down. Other state level organizations outside of Arizona. Okay, because I know about the Arizona organization. I know a little bit about that one. Okay, what I want to tell you is when you communicate with the media, your press releases, whether they be, and you can take your press release now and put it on Facebook. You can take that and not only give it to the media, you can give it to everybody else. But your press release needs to have a headline on it that really grabs attention, like Guns Save Lives. But it can be less generic and more specific to a circumstance than that. Your press release needs to be one page because, as Don said, everybody in the media is really busy. And I promise you, I'm a talk show host, and if somebody sends me a 15-page press release, it's going to the delete pile very quickly. I will sometimes send them back one sentence, give me this in 2 paragraphs and I'll read it. But that's about as close as you'll ever get to me reading a more than 2-page press release. Make your press release 1 page. Your premise needs to be in the first paragraph, your solution needs to be in the second paragraph, and your conclusion needs to be in the third paragraph. When you are talking to the media, you need to speak in sound bites. You can't start telling them that, well, yeah, the Constitution was written in 1787, but the Bill of Rights wasn't put in until 1791. You've lost them. Okay, it's important. We all know it, but you've lost them. You've got to speak in one sentence clips that they can use, because I'm telling you they're going to edit you down to 1 sentence. So make that sentence count. Well, what can you do? You've got the answer, almost all of you, in your purse pocket or laying on the phone on the table in front of you in the form of your phone. What you need to do is write down 1-sentence clips that you can use, because when that light is shining in your face, or when the on-air light comes on in a studio, it induces stress. It does 2 things. It makes sphincters slam shut, and it makes brains go numb. Those are the things that those things do. And then your emotion kicks in, and you say something really dumb, and that gets preserved forever on the internet. And on top of it, you have this contorted face saying it, and that's what goes on the internet, all right? So what you want to do is look people in the eye calmly and have a go-to phrase. Because at the end of every interview, somebody from the audience tell me this, anybody's ever been interviewed, what is the reporter, if they're any good at their job whatsoever, what do they usually ask? What? Any other thing you want to say? Is there anything I've missed? Yes, there really is. We should never penalize the innocent for the acts of the guilty. That's one phrase that sometimes when I get interviewed gets tacked on at the interview. And what that does is it's a little bit of a reach out to the people who may not share, as Don said, what our passion is. They may not share our passion, but it's a bridge to somebody who gets it. They say, oh, yeah, I believe in that. Even people that are like ACLU members will say, yeah, we probably shouldn't punish the innocent for the acts of the guilty. And thank you for listening.
Thanks, Charles. And it's my cheat sheet here. And next we're going to bring up blogger John Richardson of Only Guns and Money. There you go, Jeff.
Thank you, ma'am. Hi, I'm John Richardson. This morning I plan to tell you how I, as a citizen journalist, use the internet to advance gun rights and how you can use it too. As the representative of new media on the stage this morning, first let me tell you how I got started. I've been a long-time reader of blogs, and then in May 2010 I finally decided, I can do just as well. And I started my blog, No Lawyers, Only Guns and Money. The name was a play on the Warren Zevon song, Send Lawyers Guns and Money. I'm a financial planner, not a lawyer, hence the name. I didn't have many readers at first, but then something happened. Alan Gurr won the McDonald case and then used this ruling And then using this ruling, the Second Amendment Foundation and Grassroots North Carolina sued North Carolina to overturn our ban on firearms during states of declared emergency. I saw it as my mission to report on the details of this case and the other follow-on McDonald cases. I worked hard to provide background information so that readers would have a really good understanding of the issues. I felt that if people who supported gun rights had better knowledge than what was presented to them in the mainstream media, we could argue our side more persuasively. Fast forward to today, 4,200 plus blog posts later, 1.7 million visitors, and there have been many more cases and a good number of wins. Somewhere along the way, I added the role of podcaster to my efforts on behalf of the Second Amendment. I'm now a co-host of the Polite Society podcast, which has been live streaming this event this weekend. My blog, as well as the podcast, does four things. It educates, it informs, it advocates, and it entertains. The first three help advance the cause of gun rights, while the fourth is, well, you know, we just need to laugh a little bit sometimes, especially if it's at the expense of gun prohibitionists. Let me give you some examples. Our podcast, the Polite Society podcast, has a regular feature called Defensive Gun Uses. We compile instances of how a lawful gun owner has used a firearm to defend him or herself and their family. The examples have often included a robbery or a home invasion. We look at what the person did right and what they did wrong. We don't sugarcoat it, as we consider this essential education on the rights and responsibility of gun owners. The best example of the blogosphere informing people that help advance the cause of gun rights was the work that David Codrea, Mike Vanderboe, and Dave Workman did in exposing Operation Fast and Furious that got started right here in Phoenix. It was bloggers that connected the whistleblowers to congressional investigators. It was bloggers that introduced the whistleblowers to Cheryl Atkinson so she could air their stories on television. Many other bloggers, including myself, took the ball that David, Mike, and Dave started, and we ran with it. And it was not some botched sting operation. It was a scandal. And it was due to the efforts of new media and not old media that it got attention. We in the new media are open about our efforts to advocate on behalf of gun rights and the Second Amendment. Back in 2011, ATF was soliciting public comments on whether to implement a reporting requirement that would force border state FFLs to inform them when someone bought more than one semi-automatic rifle within a 5-day period. The gun control lobby had a letter generator. We didn't. With the assistance of one of my readers, we set up a letter generator with a pre-written letter. Our letter generator sent 3,203 letters to OMB opposing this power grab. ATF still implemented it, but by God, they couldn't say there was no opposition. In terms of entertainment, there's been too many examples. An old journalist once said, freedom of the press belongs to those who own one. Well, as a blogger and a podcaster, I do own one. And thanks to the internet, so does everyone in this room. When you post pictures of yourself taking a new shooter to the range on Facebook, you are advancing the cause. When you post a picture of a new gun you just bought to Instagram, you are normalizing guns. When you tweet a link to an article that is pro-gun, you are spreading the message. Let's not forget Tumblr, Pinterest, YouTube, etc. Posting pictures or videos of successful hunts, reloading benches, etc. help advance the gun culture. If there is one message I want to leave with you this morning, it is this. We are in a cultural war against strong, well-funded, top-down opponents. They have the mainstream media on their side. We have the grassroots. New media gives us the tools to conduct our cultural guerrilla war, build our grassroots support, and spread our message of self-reliance, freedom, and gun rights. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, John. And Herb Stepp, author and commentator, former commissioner in New York City under Rudy Giuliani, and one of our board members, will now take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Peggy. I realize as we're in the home stretch of the conference that I am the only person in the room who has been fired by Michael Bloomberg. I knew that would be the top credential I could appoint you. I wish I could report to you I was exercising my Second Amendment rights in Lower Manhattan, but it was mundane. The new mayor replaced virtually all of the commissioners of Mayor Giuliani. So, and we're really grateful C-SPAN is here. I'm not sure their cameras can pick this up, but for the audience at home, we have hundreds and hundreds of pro-Second Amendment advocates here, mostly in black tie and evening gowns. Well, we've got a daunting task. Yeah, daunting task, as our other panelists have pointed out. We're dealing with an emotionally driven conversation, as Dr. John Lott has pointed out. A lot of the people he runs into in the media don't even understand the studies that he's been doing, linking private gun ownership to reductions in crime around the country and even around the world. In my hometown of New York City, discussions or interviews on the gun issue don't even acknowledge our viewpoint. A pro-Second Amendment, pro-gun viewpoint doesn't even come into some of the reporting. Some of the journalists are committed zealots. We heard about a Bloomberg-funded so-called news website that deals with the gun issue. Obviously, we're not going to get anywhere with them. But here's who we have to work on, and we've heard variations of this. The journalists, reporters on TV, newspapers, radio, some of them are lazy, but more likely, just like almost all of us, they're strained to the breaking point too with their jobs. So the New York Daily News, you may have read, fired a bunch of their columnists and reporters. So what does that leave the rest of those folks to do? They're really scrambling to do their jobs. Maybe they were covering 1 or 2 stories a day, probably covering 3 now. So they don't have the time to focus on the facts of our issue or really many other issues. And then the cocktail party anti-gunners that we've probably all encountered at a barbecue or wherever, thinking, well, this is the fashionable viewpoint, this is what I've heard on the evening news or read in the local paper, and we can get to those folks with facts as well. So now, if your local club or your state association has been wronged, I suggest, and this is the executive summary of my talk, use honey, not vinegar, in dealing with these folks. Don't become the person that's easy to dismiss and just ignore. So if you've been wronged, appeal to the sense of fairness in the news organization. Again, newspaper, radio station, TV station. You might go to the reporter directly, you might go to an editor, and then you can ask for rebuttal time in those cases. And first, I would say establish some kind of sense of rapport. You might even commend a reporter on something else. You know, I really liked your coverage on X, on some other story that has nothing to do with the Second Amendment or guns, but you really did a number on us and ignored our viewpoint or left X, Y, and Z facts out of your report on the gun issue. As we heard yesterday, a suggestion, invite the media to events, whether maybe it's to a target range, a shooting range, or some other event where you're celebrating maybe an anniversary for your local club, which I think is coming up in Western New York, right? What I would add, though, is don't just send a letter to the newspaper or the TV station. Invite individuals, and I think you'll get a better response than what we heard about yesterday. To echo what we've heard before on this panel today, use social media. Get the word out through Twitter, Facebook, and some of the other sites that I'm not even really that familiar with. There's a lot of gray hair in the room, but do what I do in my own situation. I sometimes post a column or a book review I've done on Facebook or another site. I first got help from my younger adult children. So whether you have kids at home or not, a nephew or niece, or some of the younger members of your clubs undoubtedly know more about this. So tap them. Follow some of these reporters on Twitter. They're always really eager to give you their Twitter address. and commend them on one report, so you're establishing rapport so that you'll have some credibility and something in the bank when you talk to them about the gun issue, the Second Amendment issue. So now, if you really suffered a hit, if needed, ask for a correction. I was able to get a retraction from the New York Times when I was 20 years old, when I first met Alan Gottlieb. We were working on James Buckley's campaign for U.S. Senate. Letter to the editor. Not too long ago, I got a letter to the editor because this is a 10-second countdown to electric shock, by the way. So some large papers have an ombudsman that's supposed to deal with issues of fairness and bias and errors. So you might ask if your local news organization has an ombudsman. Maybe it's part-time, maybe it just goes right to an editor. But ask. Give the story to a competitor. So maybe the TV station has wronged you, but maybe the radio station or the newspaper will write about it, especially if they're from different media groups. Interest a local journalism school. Some journalism schools keep tabs on errors and bias in local media. Speak with the editor, news director, publisher directly about what happened and why they were wrong and what we can do to correct it. Tell Don Irvine at AIM or tell Brent Bozell at Media Research Council about it. They usually write about national stories, but occasionally you'll do some local stuff as well. A blog, which we heard from Mr. Richardson. Get a columnist interested. And website comments. So to sum up, use honey versus vinegar. Try to establish rapport with some of these folks who aren't the committed zealots against the Second Amendment. Complain and correct when necessary. And I just want to underscore, you have more options than ever to get the word out on the Second Amendment and to correct the biases or errors in the media. Thank you.
Thanks, Herb. You narrowly avoided the knitting needle. I'm going to next bring up Cheryl Todd, host of Gun Talk Arizona on KNNT, the Patriot Radio. Cheryl?
KKNT.
I'm sorry,
Double KNT.
Okay. I didn't get to meet you earlier, so good to meet you. And you've got 5 minutes too.
All right. Good morning. I am Cheryl Todd of azfirearms.com. We're a small mom and pop's gun shop just a little west of here in Avondale, Arizona. And as such, we are the backbone of this country and this industry. And I'm also the host of the newest local Gun Talk radio show here in the Valley, Gun Talk AZ on KKNT, Salem, the Patriot Radio. Thank you. And I am so honored to have been asked to come here and speak with you today on the topic of how to use the media to protect our rights, because it's really something I'm passionate about, not only as a gun store owner, as a citizen of this fine country, but also as a mom, a wife, and a grandma. It is so important. I agree with Ronald Reagan. He said that our freedoms are only one generation away from extinction. And I like to take that a step further and say our freedoms are always one generation away from extinction. And it is our responsibility to pass that baton. And so thinking about that, we decided, we use the social media that my panelists here are talking about, Facebook, Twitter, all of those fine things. But we wanted to go to a larger audience. So for us, we decided, let's think about podcast versus radio. Podcast is wonderful. We've got the Polite Society here with us today. Thank you for the work you're doing. But for us, we felt like it might be reinventing the wheel in a lot of ways, because we don't have what Salem has, which is the infrastructure already in play. They've got the equipment, they've got the staff, they've got the signal, the audience. All I have to do is show up with my hour's worth of content, and I'm good to go. And every show becomes a recording, which then is a podcast. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. It's very economical, affordable. If anybody's thinking about doing this in your cities, in your states, I would encourage you to look at the small stations, because there's a lot of value there. When you look at marketing dollars, it's a very smart way to get the message out that I think we all agree is so important. Plus, radio gives us built-in revenue building streams, sponsorships, on-air ads. We're building a referral website, and so that will help sustain the message that financially sustain the message you're trying to get out. All right, so we know how we're doing it. Who are we speaking to? Well, I'll quote another famous guy, Bill Gates. He said, "The future of leadership is in influence." Well, how are we influencing by talking on the radio? I think by just speaking up. We are the majority, but we've been silent for way too long. So we've got all of us who love our Second Amendment rights. We're never going to move from that position. We've got the whole anti-Second Amendment group who probably are never going to move from their position. But there's this whole middle space, and these are the people that haven't decided yet. And so they're trying to figure out, where are they on this spectrum? Are guns good? Are they evil? And so we try to engage in conversation and build relationship and influence and inform and educate. And the way we do that is we go to Facebook and Twitter and we find those stories on local news stations that you're never going to find on CNN or Fox, and we bring those into the show about good guy with a gun. Safe, responsible gun owner doing the right thing, protecting their family, protecting themselves, and put that into people's consciousness so they can think critically for themselves about where they might lie on this spectrum. And in doing so, we put the onus back where I think it belongs. We stop being in this defensive posture all the time, that we have this collective guilt that we bear every time a bad guy does something wrong with a gun. We say we have this platform under us, right? This foundation. It's called shall not be infringed. The shiniest example that the anti-Second Amendment crowd has is their gun-free zones and their tight restrictions is what? DC, Chicago, and Detroit. Well, once that middle space understands the true stories, the true news that's going on out there, it's going to put a lot more pressure on the anti-group to step up their game and show why would that be the better choice. And finally, I'll just say that we try to do it with a lot, to resist the teeth gnashing and the eye rolling. It's hard some days, trust me, but we're trying to engage and build relationship. And speaking of which, being in a room full of all of you fine people and hearing all of your stories, that is going to feed me, and I can go back out on the airwaves, share your stories, drop that pond and start the ripple effect flowing. And I'm so excited to take all of your stories back to Gun Talk AZ. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Cheryl. And batting cleanup on this panel is our good friend Dave Workman, senior editor of the Gun Mag.
I'm supposed to keep this as short as possible, so thank you very much. And just a couple of pieces of advice, since I deal with the media a lot for the Citizens Committee, and I'm also a member of the media. I'm a card-carrying journalist, been in the business for 40 years. If you do an interview with a reporter, don't show up wearing a t-shirt with some message on it with a 4-letter word. Don't try to tell them that there's black helicopters coming for you and that Jade Helm really is happening. Wad that stuff up in your tinfoil hat, throw it in the trash. They don't want to hear it, and they will relegate you to the corner as a moron or a nut. You are an ambassador for us. Speak the truth, speak plainly, as some of my colleagues said. Get right to the point, give them sound bites so that they can use facts, be able to back those things up. We're in the middle of a lawsuit in Washington State right now. I've spoken to several reporters about this. They send camera crews over to our offices. Alan Gottlieb has done the same thing, and I've been in the room for some of those. One thing that I found very useful when we're talking about a situation with Seattle, which has done this $25 tax, and we are fighting that on the basis of it's a violation of the state preemption law. I printed out a copy of the state preemption law, highlighted where the Seattle lawsuit is going wrong, and explained this to the reporters. They look at that and they say, oh yeah, they really are wrong, aren't they? That plants the seed that there's another side to this story. It gives them a resource that they can look at, and they can take this to their editor, and they'll say, well, yeah, but wait a minute, those guys over there, they say that this is against the law, they say that the law is on their side, and guess what? Looks like they're right. We do have the facts on our side. We have to use them wisely. As I said, you're an ambassador. You want to become a regular, reliable news contact for these people. They want to be able to call you to get the obligatory comment. So make sure that you give them something with good raw meat in it, something they can use. I can't begin to tell you the number of stories that I have done where I'd call somebody up for an interview, ask them a bunch of, and they get off on some tangent that has had absolutely nothing to do with the story at hand. And I thank them politely and go find somebody else to talk to. So if you're going to establish this relationship with a member of the press, me included, be upfront, be accurate, get to the point, get past the point, and go about the rest of your lives. You're going to get the attention that this issue deserves, but you've got to do it right and you've got to do it smart. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks for keeping it short. Thank you all panelists, all great points, good information. We still hope to have Q&A later in the morning, but if you need to talk to Cheryl or John or Don or Herb or even Dave, you know, you can catch them out in the hall. I'm going to bring up my next two panelists who are already behind because they should have been up here 10 minutes ago, but this will be an interesting one. And its title is Oddities, Language, Movies, Journalism, and Guns in only 7 minutes each. And our panelists are Alan Corwin. I'm not sure who that guy is.
Sweet.
And J. Neil Schulman, who has not been with us for several years. I think the last GRPC he was at was our LA one. So that will be a good time for all. We're going to start off with Alan Corwin, author, and bon vivant. So there you go, Alan. 7 minutes.
Thank you, Peggy. I'm Alan Corwin of GunLaws.com, and we won our First Amendment lawsuit against Phoenix, so our Guns Save Lives bus stops are back up all over town. But the news media still refuses to say anything about your first gun. When did you ever hear the media say anything about getting a gun? 60 million American homes are safely armed, and they don't say anything about this. The unbiased, fair and balanced news media censors this subject, the most fundamental thing in America, and you don't hear about it. So let me ask you, is anyone in this room pro-gun? I can't hear you. Is anyone pro-gun? I still can't hear you. Are you pro-gun? Well, some of you get the idea. I think being pro-gun is a really bad idea. And here's why. If you're pro-gun, what's the other side? Anti-gun. And they think guns are really bad. So they think being anti-gun is the right way to go. They think that's the moral high ground. You should be anti-gun because guns are evil. And they kill us on the words all the time, and we let them. I think you're really pro-rights. And if you're pro-rights, what does that make them? Anti-rights. And who wins that battle just on the words? You do. We're pro-rights, they're anti-rights. You're pro-freedom, you're pro-self-defense. They're anti-rights, anti-freedom, anti-self-defense. And we win that on the words. We have to win the war of the words. Words matter. They want you to talk about assault weapons. Assault is a kind of behavior. It is not a kind of hardware. When they introduced, that's why they're having such a hard time defining it. When they introduced Dianne Feinstein's assault weapons bill, it was 100 pages long. And on page 2, it said an assault weapon has a pistol grip. On page 13, I read these things, unlike Anderson Cooper and Wolf Blitzer. Wolf? On page 13, it said a pistol grip is anything that can function as a grip. That's all firearms. They wanted to ban all firearms by calling them assault weapons, and assault is a kind of behavior. They're using deceit to beat us. They can't win on the merits, so they use deceit. And that's what we face in the media. They talk about gun control. That's a false flag for citizen disarmament. We want to talk about crime control, and that's a phrase they don't use. Words matter. And that British guy, who wasn't even a citizen, abusing our airwaves, he kept asking, why does anyone need an AR-15 or 30-round magazine? That's a communist question. In America, ownership of property isn't based on need, like someone's in charge of deciding what you need and therefore you can have it. You don't need 10 pairs of shoes. You don't need a refrigerator the size of a closet. The real question is, why does anybody want an AR-15 or a 30-round magazine like most of you guys already own? You want it, and they still don't know. You want it for the same reason the police do. And they still can't figure that out. You want it because it's better, it's safer, it works great, it's accurate, it's easy to maintain. More ammunition is safer. They don't understand this. This is a question of wanting something in America, and they just don't get that. And now we're at the heart of the matter. The media doesn't ask the real questions and has become the greatest threat to American freedom that we face. Anderson Cooper, Wolf Blitzer, Rachel, even O'Reilly. When will they ask Hillary or the guy currently in the White House, why do you want another background check? What about the one we currently have that, according to the Brady Center, whose statistics we can accurately face, what about the 2 million felons you say you've stopped with the current background check? 2 million felons. Where are they? We have their names and addresses. We have their names and addresses. Where are they? They tried to buy a gun. Hillary, isn't that illegal? Where are they? Your husband passed this background check. Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry. They're not all felons. Some of them are crazy. You let them go? You want to spend money on another background check? Why aren't the reporters asking this? I'll tell you why. They're not reporters. They're propagandists for the dark side. Were these criminals allowed to confront their accusers? Were they even told what they're charged with? Where's the ACLU? These people were denied their rights by some kid in front of a computer in Clarksburg, West Virginia. Where's the due process? Who are these criminals that they stopped? We don't even know. And they're out running free trying to buy guns, and they want another background check. They should spend some of that $1 billion that they want for another background check on dealing with the criminals they say they found who don't know what they're charged with, who weren't given a trial, and we don't know anything about them. It's a fraud. And the people posing as reporters aren't asking these questions of any of the presidential candidates. That's what we face in the media. It's not media, it's propaganda. And the trapdoor is going to open in a moment here. Well, they've got a guy running who's a socialist. Socialism is the arch enemy of us and capitalism, and they're practically promoting them. We stand for the creation of wealth, they stand for the confiscation of wealth and redistribution of it to people who didn't earn it. And they're promoting the guy instead of challenging him. Why isn't the mainstream media asking who's going to pay for free college? You have to come to Alan Gottlieb's Gun Rights Policy Conference to get this kind of truth, or to gunlaws.com, my website, to get more of this kind of truth. And that's the problem with the media. That's what we face. That's where you'll find out what Black lives are really about, or the Don't Encourage Evil initiative, which we're introducing. That's why you come here. That's what we really face. I'm Alan Corwin of gunlaws.com. Thank you all for being here, and God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan. Thank you so much, Alan. And now we'll hear from Neil Schulman. Neil?
Thank you. I'm J. Neil Schulman, author and filmmaker, and I made this movie alongside Night about the American Revolution returning in our time, and we gave copies to just about everybody who came to this conference. And for those of you watching on C-SPAN, you can go to Amazon.com and buy it. So let's talk about the first American Revolution. By the rude bridge that arched the flood, their flag to April's breeze unfurled. Here once the embattled farmers stood and fired the shot heard round the world. Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote those words about felons illegally in possession of firearms who on April 19, 1775, used those illegal guns to shoot at police legally appointed by the governor to confiscate their illegal guns. In the exchange of gunfire, 3 cops were killed and 9 cops were wounded. Sheriff David Clark, I have bad news for you. This country was founded by cop killers. Roughly 226 years later, on September 11, 2001, 4 commercial jetliners filled with passengers, flight attendants, and flight crew, all of them disarmed of firearms by United States federal law, were overpowered by jihadi militiamen armed only with box cutters, 4 per aircraft. 2 of those captured aircraft were used as weapons to crash into New York's Twin Towers financial headquarters. 1 crashed into the U.S. military headquarters in Washington, D.C., and 1 flight where the disarmed passengers, none of them with military or police uniforms or badges, fought the jihadi militiamen who, rather than surrender, crashed the plane into a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. The casualties that day were just under 3,000, but in subsequent years, wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, and elsewhere cost the United States thousands of more lives, trillions of dollars, and a wounded warrior class. Gun control gave us 9/11. I'm a writer and filmmaker who has sold stories and screenplays to Hollywood production companies, including an original script for The Twilight Zone broadcast by CBS in primetime March 7, 1986. My new narrative feature film, Alongside Night, based on my first novel published in October 1979, was given out to participants at this conference as a counterpoint to the usual Hollywood movies that treat privately held firearms as dangers to public safety. Hollywood writers and producers led by Harvey Weinstein hate private gun ownership, yet the entertainment industry makes movies and TV shows full of guns. Hollywood gets past its own objections by having these guns be either futuristic ray guns or ordinary guns used to shoot the heads off zombies, or by having the guns be used by cops. Primetime U.S. television is dominated by shows featuring law enforcement officers and military service personnel as the armed heroes. On the other side is a political right wing dominated by politicians who assign absolute human rights only to the unborn. Anyone breathing air has only government-granted privileges, driving licenses, gun licenses, work permits, and so forth. They talk about a right to work, but want to build a wall to keep out workers. They want gun rights only for the law-abiding. In other words, anyone who meekly complies with thousands of tyrannical regulations. I'm here to agree with the signers of the Declaration of Independence, a legal document more binding than the Constitution, that when any government, police, and regulations become oppressive of the people's rights, the people have the moral right to resist abuse of their rights under color of law, and existing federal law agrees with me. Look up Title 18, U.S. Code Section 242, which says that any official, local, state, or federal, who violates constitutionally protected rights is acting as a criminal and has zero legal authority to do so. Title 18, U.S. Code Section 242. Title 18, U.S. Code Section 242. Title 18, U.S. Code Section 242. By the way, the Second Amendment in a recent Seventh Circuit decision applies to illegal immigrants. And I need to tell you something that is not going to be pleasant for a lot of you to hear. It also applies to drug gangs, because nowhere in the U.S. Constitution is the word drug mentioned. And according to the 9th and 10th Amendments, if it ain't listed in the Constitution as powers of the federal government, anything they do on this subject is void ab initio. That's how Black Lives Matter and defenders of the Bill of Rights, you in this room, can get together. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Neil. And thank you again, Alan. Great. I'm going to bring up my next panel, which I have to get my cheat sheet for, which is Outreach in a Brave New World. And our participants are Phil Watson, Senior Project Director of the Second Amendment Foundation, who helped put together our shoot on Friday, so many of you probably got to meet him. Brian Hartong, Principal of Rapid Response Television, and Andrew Gottlieb, the newest member of the SAF team, Director of Outreach and Development. I'm here to tell Andrew that, yes, you can work with your parents. So we'll let Andrew start it off with about 8 minutes, Andrew.
Hi there, everybody. So I got a question for all of you to start. How many of you are under the age of 30? So we got the under. How many of you are active on Facebook? It's good to see. How about Twitter? Anyone on Reddit? That's good to see. So these are where people my age, people under the age of 30, are getting their news. 68% of people would rather go online to get their news than read a newspaper or another trusted site. And we believe it. So we all talk about media and how we deal with it every day. They're always against us. Social media is the one outlet that we get to shape. There is no bias other than what we want it to be. I put in all your folders, if you still have them, a sticker in it that is #2A, which is basically the face of our movement on social media. Anything that's searched by that comes up. You see the NRA use it, you see NSSF use it, everybody uses it, including us. And that's how we get our messages out. The difference with social media is it's all about people, not money. So because of this, because we are that active, silent majority, we are the majority, we get to control what's out. So the more we can post, obviously, the more we get our message out, what we want to say, and we get the younger crowd, which is what we need. This room shows that we have a lot of older people. And like we've said in the past, we lose our rights one generation at a time. And our generation is the one that we have to capture so that that doesn't happen. Second Amendment, number 2, for a reason. Just like in Texas, where we have our 3D printed case with the First Amendment, the Second Amendment also is involved, and we have a generation that is told by the media what is right and what's wrong. And every day we have a fight where it's hard to go against media that tells us we're crazy. So the whole idea that I want to talk about is that we need to be more educating on social media, more open, less arguments, more education. So I want to see everybody be more active in the future. I want to see you posting the hashtags. I want to see you getting on these new sites so that we can shape the movement. We get to control what's there. Let's not lose it. So I have a question for all of you. How many of you are going to sign up after this? How many are going to get on Reddit? How many are going to get on Facebook and Twitter and all these other things and actually post and be active?
What's a Reddit?
Right? Google it. So what Reddit is basically a forum. It's an open site where anyone can post whatever they want. It's all sorted into categories. It's a lot like Wikipedia in a sense, but it's all driven daily. We actually get quite a bit of traffic on our website from these social media aspects, from younger people. And when we don't have anything to teach them to really get our side across, we lose them. And so it's basically, we really need to be active on these sites, on all this media, so that we can contract the message we want to get across and get them. Because we cannot afford to lose another generation and lose our rights. Thank you guys very much.
What a guy. Thank you. Thank you very much, Andrew. And we'll bring Brian up next.
Good morning. Name is Brian Hartong, and I'm the president of Rapid Response Television. And I'm going to talk a little more about traditional media. We started Rapid Response Television about 3 years ago, and really it was in response to, I was in the outreach fundraising industry for many, many, many years. But one of the things became apparent, really about 5 years ago, is that we were all fishing in the same pond. Meaning that when you looked at who we were doing outreach to, who we were trying to approach, everybody was basically preaching to the choir. You know, what we're after is we're not after reaching out to folks in this room, people to spend a weekend at a gun rights policy conference. We don't need to reach out. You guys are engaged. You want to reach out to the majority out there that agree on Second Amendment rights, but aren't necessarily engaged. And the way we felt to do that, to reach that audience, because part of the problem with social media and some of the digital media is, where do they get the names to? Where do they decide who to go out to? A lot of times it's because it's somebody who has engaged in, somebody who has done something to get on the radar screen. But we're after the millions of people that are not on the radar screen out there that do believe in Second Amendment rights. And we do a lot of work with SAF, and you might have seen some of the ads that we do. So we do it through TV, but we do it a little different than a lot of the ads you may see out there. We don't do PSA ads. We don't do nice, fancy, feel-good ads that just tell a story. Our ads, the way we do it is we use traditional direct marketing, direct response techniques, like you see when you use sell products on TV. And then we mirror that with how do people, you know, the traditional techniques for fundraising and outreach. So when we produce an ad, we really accomplish 3 things. One, it's down and dirty and it gets right to the point, and it gets people's attention. So our first goal is to get people to take a second look at the TV. And, you know, what is this? What are they talking about? Second thing we do for the next 30 seconds of a 1-minute spot is really hit them between the eyes on the issue. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to get people to believe in Second Amendment rights and our freedoms, and we want them to look at the TV and say, yeah, you're damn right, I agree with that. And then we ask them to do something. And when we ask them to do something, it's not to raise money. It is to do something to participate, to get them engaged, and we try to make it as easy as possible. So whether it's call a number or go online and sign a petition to send millions of names and voices to Congress before a vote. Whether it is to get people to become members and gain thousands of members for organizations like SAF. Or whether it's to shut down the phones. One of the things that we have is we make it very easy for people to call in and not just put a phone number that just goes to the general congressional office, because that's nice and it's a minor irritant to congressmen and senators when you call their office in DC. It's a real irritant when you load up every single phone number that they have in their home states and their regional offices, and we have technology that'll actually search out and find a free line. So if they have 15 numbers, we'll load all 15 numbers, and when you call in, we have a technology that will actually find the next line. And when you shut down all their lines, then people are going to start calling them and they're going to start caring. In TV, Second Amendment has been one of the biggest issues and the most passionate issue that we've done. And there's some reasons for that on TV. Part of it is that there is a passion out there, so it's easy for people to engage in. Part of it is TV is not, on the pro Second Amendment side, TV is not used as aggressively that it is on the other side. And there's some reasons for that I learned the hard way 3 years ago. So I always like to tell this story to kind of tell you why that happens. In spring of 2013, we had our first major pro-gun rights campaign going for a client. And I was told by a major provider that had about over 30% of all the US homes that they would not run my ad. Okay, and I asked them why. And he said, because the issue is too controversial and we will not run that issue on our network. Okay. That night I'm laying in bed, or a couple days later, I'm laying in bed watching TV and a Bloomberg ad comes on. So needless to say, I didn't sleep that night. And I was on the phone the next morning with a lawyer, with the network, because as you know, they have to give equal time. So if they do agree to do an issue, they have to do the opposing issue. But it's something that I battle on a daily basis. It's something that, so money is an issue out there. Bloomberg is putting a lot of money into it, but understand that the mainstream media is also doing their part to shut us down. The providers are doing their part to shut us down. They'll find every excuse that they can find to not air a TV ad that is pro-Second Amendment and pro-guns. But they won't hesitate on taking Bloomberg's money and running his ads. So it's something that is important, that we have to keep pushing. We have to be on TV because it is a medium that reaches out and grabs a broader audience, and it catches people that are unexpected, and that's the best time to catch them, when they're not looking for it. So TV is a medium that we need to keep fighting for, we need to keep investing in, and we need to keep out there to get the message out and get the outreach. Thank you.
I like these Brave New World people are very good on time, so we'll turn it over to Phil now. Phil Watson.
Hi, my name's Phil Watson. I'm the Special Projects Director for the Second Amendment Foundation. Worked there for about 4 years now, and I came over from a place called the Leadership Institute in Arlington, Virginia, which is why I'm wearing a seersucker suit today to honor Morton Blackwell. And Morton has been kind enough to send 2 great veteran campaigners after the conference today. We're going to go over across the parking lot to the Crestview room. and we're going to have a meeting there on grassroots lobbying. So I hope to see as many of you there as possible. A lot of my work with the Second Amendment Foundation has been focused on things to do with outreach, public relations, getting grassroots gun owners involved. And I've really done some interesting things to try to get the truth out there to the public. I went to Alan Gottlieb one day and said, look, we've really got to start looking into what Michael Bloomberg is doing. And we basically found out, and with our research project, Meet the Mayors, that a lot of the people that joined Bloomberg's group, Mayors Against Illegal Guns, didn't even know they joined, or were felons. It's true. And we put that out there. It goes completely viral every time we do something with it. There's over 30 now of these people that have worked with Michael Bloomberg, that have been charged and convicted in courts of law of everything from pedophilia to assault to violating the gun laws that they themselves passed. And so it's very interesting when you hear Bloomberg talk about this stuff as if he really has clean hands, and he really doesn't. And one of the things that really shocked me about Michael Bloomberg when I continually look into him and what he's doing was just this last year. He did this conference at the Aspen Institute, and he said all young minority males should be disarmed. And I come from a mixed race family, and I think that's a crazy statement. And I think that is a plainly, obviously racist statement. And I don't think Michael Bloomberg has apologized yet. And he should apologize, and he has to. Because if we're not going to demand an apology for when this guy does something wrong, then who is? The media is not. We all know that. The media loves to help him out with his message. So I want to give you an interesting tidbit about a book I've been reading. It's called Trust Me, I'm Lying. And no, it's not written by Michael Bloomberg. So it's a great book. It's going to give you a lot of tools to sort of traverse the media landscape. And a lot of the techniques in there are techniques that I've used. And one of the fun things was giving tips to bloggers. Sometimes things happen out there and you don't always know it's us. But things like when Michael Bloomberg's websites were found out to be registered on the City of New York servers, that went viral. That originally started with us giving tips to bloggers out there. And Michelle Malkin's website picked it up, the Ace of Spades website picked it up, and it just went viral from there on out. And it's just little things like that we can do to sort of give the media a nudge. A lot of the outreach I do is online. I don't know a lot of the people that I talk to all the time. I meet them online all over the world. And we've done great work with our international group, the International Association for the Protection of Civilian Arms Rights. And we've got over 30 groups now, I believe, all over the world. A lot of the people I've never met in person. I just know that they do great work, and that the only way that I can communicate with them usually is online. And so if you can, go there and do us a service and repost our stuff and look at that, because it's very educational. There's a whole world out there. It's not just a fight in the United States. There's basically three parts to what I'm telling you today. There's a battle with Bloomberg and the other billionaires. There's a battle with cities like Seattle, which is really a propaganda war, sort of funded by Bloomberg, and a battle against ourselves. And so the battle against the cities, Seattle's a perfect example of that. I'm the plaintiff in one of our lawsuits to get rid of the new Seattle city gun tax. And it's really an outrage. They want to tax every single gun sold in Seattle and every single bullet sold in Seattle, and blame law-abiding citizens like everybody in this room for the actions of a few criminals. And I think it's an outrage. And so we should definitely watch out for stuff like that, because look, Bloomberg's going to try to use anything and everything he can to ban guns, and if he can't ban guns, he wants to make them cost thousands and thousands of dollars. He can afford them. He can afford them for his security guards, but he doesn't want us to have them. So that's really important to fight stuff like that. Thank you. One of the most amazing discoveries that we've made was just going through all these online records of records requests that we had made, and we found the gun control playbook. And it was a 80-something page media guide to how to basically ban guns. And I want to give you some talking points today on how to fight that. One of their talking points there is, look, they want to divide us, okay? They want to break us down into little groups. This is pitting us against ourselves. Open carry versus concealed carry versus hunters versus different types of guns, and they want to make everybody out to seem like a criminal and seem like you don't care. And the one way to really fight that is just to turn their talking points around on them. And one of the best lines that I've come up with was to use their line, which is, if it saves one life. If it saves one life, we must pass national carry now. If it saves one life, we must get rid of all these, ridiculous, really ridiculous gun-free zones today, not tomorrow, today. And that can go on and on. It's really getting to where these cases are happening every day almost, to where somebody either defends themselves with a gun or did not have the right to have a gun because they were either in some gun-free zone or they were just prohibited completely from having it because of some state law, like this woman in New Jersey who was, she applied many times for her permit, but kept getting denied for no reason whatsoever, and she was eventually killed in her own driveway. And I think that's a perfect example of, if we can just save one life, then you have to pass the bill. You have to pass the bill. And that's part of the battle against ourselves. It's so easy to get wrapped up again in all these sort of petty arguments. Who did what when? What happened in 1791? And that's not to delegitimize anything that anyone else has fought for. But people want to know how this policy is going to affect them. Not what it did back in 1791. They want to know how it's going to do today. So, to summarize, groups need to stop fighting with each other, recognize the real enemy, and stop listening to the groups like this group out of Colorado. I'm not going to give them the pleasure of having their name on TV, but they have the same amount of accomplishments as Hillary. That's 0. So quit listening to groups that haven't done anything ever for you. We're out there on the front lines every single day trying to preserve your rights. And I really hope to see every single one of you. It'd be a packed room, and I'd really love it over there after we get done today. So thank you very much, and have a wonderful conference.
I'm the leading state sponsor of terrorism